Fyodor Dostoevsky was a 19th century novelist, philosopher, and a profound thinker on the nature of suffering in our world. He is regarded as one of the most influential authors of all of world literature. Dostoevsky was born in 1821 in Moscow, Russia, to an Orthodox Christian family. Suffering was abundant for young Dostoevsky. At 9 years of age, a friend and playmate of his was raped and subsequently killed. One of his acquaintances recounts the effects it had on the young soul. Quote, Dostoevsky said to me, to take someone's life is a terrible sin, but to take away one's faith in the beauty of life is an even more terrible crime. In 1837, at age 15, his mother died of tuberculosis. 2 years later, when Dostoevsky was studying military engineering, his father died of an unknown cause. Some think that Dostoevsky showed his first signs of epilepsy after learning about his father's passing. Epilepsy is a brain disorder that causes recurring seizures. He dealt with the seizures from this disorder for the remainder of his life. It is likely the culmination of these events laid the groundwork for his profound meditations on faith, suffering, and the human condition. After the death of his parents, Dostoevsky graduated and briefly worked as an engineer, but soon found his passion in writing. After the success of his first book, Poor Folk, Dostoevsky soon found his works harshly criticized by the major critics of the time. Partly from the disappointment with literary circles, he joined secret meetings of a group of writers and thinkers focused on utopian socialism. Then, in 1849, he and his companions were arrested by the government. The court verdict was the following. Fyodor Dostoevsky, 27 years old, by the decision of the general in charge of the military court for criminal conspiracy, is sentenced to death by firing squad. Dostoevsky reflects on the moments preceding his execution in one of his most personal novels, The Idiot, through the character Prince Myshkin. Yet he said that nothing was more oppressive for him at that moment than the constant thought, what if I were not to die? What if life were given back to me? What infinity? And it would all be mine. Then I'd turn each minute into a whole age. I'd lose nothing. I'd reckon up every minute separately. I'd let nothing be wasted. He said that in the end, this thought turned into such anger in him that he wished they would hurry up and shoot him. Then, at the last moment of the execution, a pardon was sent by the Tsar. The event turned out to be a mock execution. Mock executions serve many functions, but in this case, it was a public stunt to demonstrate the benevolence of the Tsar. These executions also serve to mentally torture a person. The effects of this torture often lead to mental disorders. One of the prisoners that stood in line with Dostoevsky went permanently insane. Following the execution, Dostoevsky was sent to 4 years in a Siberian camp, coupled with an indeterminate term as a soldier. However, Dostoevsky would remain hopeful. He wrote to his brother, I haven't lost heart. Remember that hope has not abandoned me. After all, I was at death's door today. I lived with a thought for 3/4 of an hour. I faced the last moment, and now I am alive again. Dostoevsky would return home to Russia in 1859 after 10 long years. Dostoevsky then toiled. He picked up writing again, this time with a different attitude. His works now lacked the romanticism of his earlier works, and now showed the horrors he had witnessed in the camps. His tragic voice as a writer was reflected in his style, and his conviction in his beliefs was stronger than ever. Then, in 1869, Dostoevsky wrote, Beauty will save the world. These words are attributed to Prince Myshkin by the other characters, and interestingly are never said by the prince himself. However, more importantly, it left the readers wondering, how can a life like his assert that beauty will save the world? How can Dostoevsky, a man whose life was filled with pain, suffering, and grief, proclaim that beauty of all things would save the world? The author of the Gulag Archipelago, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, expressed his confusement in his Nobel Prize speech. What sort of a statement is that? For a long time, I considered it mere words. How could that be possible? When in bloodthirsty history did beauty ever save anyone from anything? Ennobled, uplifted, yes, but whom has it saved? In the novel where the passage is written, Prince Myshkin, the main character, is a genuinely kind and innocent soul who traverses a world filled with greed and nihilism. Just like Dostoevsky, Myshkin has epilepsy. The innocent soul tries to be charitable to the world, gives and rarely takes, yet in the end, what he accomplishes amounts to zero. At the end of the novel, what Prince Myshkin meets is a chilling fate as he gives into insanity. However, in acts of charity, love, hope, and humility, Myshkin, like Dostoevsky, transforms his sufferings into lessons. In this, we find our first clue of what Dostoevsky could have meant. When we first see a beautiful work of art, we are inspired. That feeling of wonder and awe captures you, and there are no words to express your thoughts. There is no rationale or syllogism that can convince you of the beauty of something, yet you are still persuaded by its splendor. Truth alone may convince us logically, but it can never touch the heart of belief. Human beings, after all, are not purely logical creatures. Hans von Balthasar says, "In a world that no longer has any confidence in itself to affirm the beautiful, the proofs of the truth have lost their cogency." In other words, syllogisms may still dutifully clatter away like rotary presses or computers which infallibly spew out an exact number of answers by the minute. But the logic of these answers is itself a mechanism which no longer captivates anyone. The problem in our world is that of apathy and distraction. That feeling of captivation is what everyone longs for, but a minority find. But in truth, everything has a beauty, but not everyone sees it. There is a beauty in hope, faith, doubt, humility, love, life, and death. For a farmer, the dirt the everyday person walks on has the potential for life. And for Dostoevsky, maybe that same life, that same beauty, was found in overcoming suffering to make the world a beautiful place for the following generations. As Alexander Solzhenitsyn expresses later in his speech, in that case, Dostoevsky's remark, "Beauty will save the world," was not a careless phrase, but a prophecy. Dostoevsky changed his sufferings into blessings, his experience into stories, his life into a testimony, and his death into inspiration. Engraved right now on Dostoevsky's tombstone is John 12:24. "Most assuredly I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain." In other words, what is sown in the earth is subject to decay, but what rises out is incorruptible. Beauty on its own may not save the world, but it may just be the first of many doors that help us maintain a level of hope and optimism in the world. Perhaps it is beauty that will knock down the walls of cynicism and despair. Perhaps, as was the case for Dostoevsky, there must be beauty in life before anything. There must be a fire that remains burning not by intellect alone. Hours after he stood facing the barrel of a gun, Dostoevsky wrote, "When I look back at the past and think how much time has been wasted in vain, how much time was lost in delusions, in errors, in idleness, in ignorance of how to live, how I did not value time, how often I sinned against my heart and spirit. My heart bleeds. Life is a gift. Life is happiness. Beauty will save the world." Fyodor Dostoevsky.